Amid the rush of the day, she walked in. An elderly woman with a face marked by time, wearing a simple faded dress and worn-out shoes. Ethan noticed right away. Something was troubling her. She moved slowly through each aisle, carefully looking at every item. It was as if each choice weighed heavily on her. When she reached the counter, she placed only the essentials: bread, milk, and a few cans. But it was clear she didn't have enough. Ethan, without hesitation, did what his heart told him to. "Don't worry, today's on me." She could hardly believe it. Her hands trembled, her eyes filled with gratitude as she said, "You have no idea how much this means to me. Things have been so hard lately." And before leaving, she insisted on leaving a note with her name and address. "If you ever need me, this is where you'll find me." "I'm true to my word," she said with a small smile. Little did Ethan know that simple act of kindness would change his life forever. A simple act, an unexpected twist. Stay with us until the end to see how this story ends. It was another ordinary day for Ethan, a 26-year-old clerk at a convenience store in Springfield, Ohio. He worked long hours, handling the daily rush of customers who came and went without pause. The store was located at a busy intersection, meaning the demand never slowed down from open to close. Despite the exhaustion, Ethan always maintained a smile on his face. He believed that being kind didn't cost anything and could, in some way, make someone's day better. On this particular day, the heat was suffocating. The store's air conditioning barely kept the environment comfortable, and Ethan could feel the sweat trickling down his back as he kept up with the constant stream of customers. Shelves needed restocking, the register line never stopped, and the drive-thru was as busy as ever. It was one of those days where every minute felt like an eternity. Amid the chaos, an elderly woman walked into the store. She wore a simple faded dress, and her shoes were worn with age. Her hunched shoulders and tired expression caught Ethan's attention. As she slowly made her way through the aisles, carefully examining each item, Ethan noticed that she was taking longer than usual to pick out what she needed, and her face showed hesitation, as if something was troubling her. Minutes later, the woman approached the counter with just a few items: a carton of milk, a loaf of bread, and a couple of canned goods. Ethan greeted her with his usual warm smile. "Good afternoon, ma'am. How are you today?" he asked, his voice calm and welcoming despite his own fatigue. The elderly woman smiled faintly, but didn't meet his eyes. She seemed lost in thought, almost as if she were mentally calculating something. "Well, I think I'll put the milk back. Or maybe the bread," she muttered, clearly unsure. Ethan saw the conflict in her eyes. She reached into her worn-out purse and pulled out an old wallet, revealing just a few crumpled dollar bills and a bank card. He had seen this situation countless times before. People forced to choose between paying for necessities and saving what little money they had. His heart sank as he realized that even these basic items were a struggle for her to afford. "Don't worry about it," Ethan said naturally as he scanned the items. "Today, it's on me." The elderly woman looked shocked, her eyes wide as she quickly protested. "Oh no, young man, I can't accept that. It wouldn't be right," she stammered, trying to hand the items back. Ethan gave her a reassuring smile. "Please don't worry, I've done this before. Consider it a gift," he said discreetly, using his own debit card to cover the purchase. Her hands trembled and tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at Ethan with a mixture of gratitude and embarrassment. "You have no idea what this means to me, son," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "Things have been so hard lately. I promise I'll pay you back." Ethan shook his head gently. "There's no need for that, ma'am. What matters is that you leave here with what you need. That's what's important." The woman picked up the bags with trembling hands, but before leaving, she insisted on writing something down on a piece of paper she found in her worn purse. She handed it to Ethan, who glanced at the name and address written in shaky handwriting. "Rosalie Carter. If you ever need anything, this is where you can find me." "I'm good on my word," she said with a small smile before walking out the door. Ethan tucked the note into his pocket, not thinking much of it. For him, helping others came naturally. However, the mood in the store shifted. His co-workers, who had witnessed the scene from a distance, began whispering among themselves. Sarcastic comments and judgmental glances quickly followed. Ethan, "You're way too nice for this world. You can't just go around helping every person who walks in here," said Jake, one of his colleagues. "People are going to take advantage of you." Ethan smiled, but didn't let the remarks bother him. "I'd rather believe in the good in people. That's how I choose to live," he responded calmly. What Ethan didn't know was that his simple act of kindness would come at an unexpected cost. A few hours later, during his break, the store manager, Mr. Hendricks, called him into his office. "Ethan, I need to talk to you about what happened today with that customer," said the manager, his expression serious. Ethan nodded, thinking it would be a routine conversation. "I heard you paid for her items," Hendricks continued, crossing his arms. "Ethan, we have rules here. You can't use your personal money at the register, even with the best intentions. It creates confusion and could lead to problems with the store's finances." Ethan was taken aback. "But sir, I didn't take any money from the register. I used my own card," he explained, feeling a mix of disbelief and frustration. The manager shook his head, unmoved. "It doesn't matter. The company can't allow that kind of behavior. I'm sorry, Ethan, but I'm going to have to let you go." Ethan's world seemed to stop in that moment. Fired for doing what he thought was right? It didn't make sense. He tried to argue, but Mr. Hendricks remained firm. The young man left the store with a heavy heart and a mind full of doubt. Had he made the wrong choice? As he walked home, a deep sadness settled in his chest. Little did Ethan know his good deed would not be forgotten so easily. Fate had other surprises in store for him. Ethan arrived home, feeling the weight of his dismissal heavy on his shoulders. The day, which had started like any other, now felt as though it was falling apart. He had done what he thought was right, but in the end, being kind had seemingly cost him his job. As he walked through the quiet streets of Springfield, Ohio, his mind was swirling with confusion. The trees lining the sidewalks, the distant sound of traffic, and the lingering heat of the late afternoon only made the atmosphere feel more oppressive. When he stepped through the door of his small home, he was greeted by his younger sister, Emma, who was sitting on the living room couch, immersed in a book. Emma, only 10 years old, was a bright and lively child, always with a smile on her face. But as she looked up and saw the expression on her brother's face, her smile faded. "Ethan, are you okay?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. Ethan forced a smile, not wanting to worry her. "Just a rough day at work, Emma. Nothing for you to worry about," he said, gently ruffling her hair. Their mother, Laura, appeared in the kitchen, preparing dinner. A strong woman, Laura had been raising her 2 children alone since her husband had died in a car accident a few years earlier. She always did her best to keep the family together, even as they faced constant financial struggles. Ethan's paycheck was an essential part of their household income, and he knew the news of his job loss would be hard for all of them. "How was work today, hon?" Laura asked casually as she stirred a pot on the stove. Ethan hesitated for a moment, trying to find the right words. He didn't want to add to his mother's stress, but he knew he couldn't hide the truth. "Mom, I lost my job today," he said plainly, not wanting to drag it out. Laura stopped stirring for a moment, clearly taken aback. She turned slowly to face him, her brow furrowed in concern. "What? What happened?" she asked, her voice filled with worry. Ethan sighed deeply before explaining the situation. "An elderly woman came into the store today. She was having a tough time and couldn't afford the basic items she needed. So I paid for her with my own money, with my own. The problem is, the manager didn't like that and said it violated store policy. I ended up getting fired." Laura stood silent for a moment, absorbing what she had just heard. On one hand, she felt a deep pride in her son for being so generous and kind-hearted. On the other hand, she knew that losing his job would be a major setback for them. "Ethan, you did the right thing. So helping others is what matters most." "But," she trailed off, the concern clear in her eyes, "how are we going to manage the bills now?" Ethan felt his chest tighten as he realized the full impact of losing his job. His mother relied on his income, and being unemployed would only add to their financial struggles. Before he could respond, the phone rang, breaking the tense silence. He walked over to the phone, still lost in thought. The number on the caller ID was unfamiliar. "Hello?" Ethan answered, his voice automatic. On the other end, a warm, friendly voice replied. "Hi, Ethan. My name is David Carter. I'm the grandson of Rosalie Carter, the woman you helped today at the store. She told me what you did, and I wanted to thank you personally for your kindness." Ethan was surprised by the call. He hadn't expected his good deed to reach the woman's family, but he smiled, feeling a little comforted. "It was nothing, Mr. Carter. I just did what I thought was right," Ethan said humbly. David paused before continuing. "Well, I also heard about your dismissal, and I have to say I'm shocked by how the store handled the situation. You were fired for being kind. That's unbelievable." Ethan let out a humorless chuckle, silently agreeing. It was still hard for him to process that he had lost his job over an act of kindness. "Yeah, it's been a strange day," he said, trying to downplay it. But David wasn't just calling to express his gratitude. He had something more in mind. "Listen, Ethan, my grandmother was deeply touched by what you did. She's a very special person to me, and seeing someone help her like that was incredible. I'd like to propose something to you. Can we meet tomorrow to talk more about it?" Ethan was intrigued. He had no idea what David wanted to discuss, but the offer sounded promising. Maybe it was just a way to thank him, or maybe there was something more. Either way, he couldn't help but feel curious. "Sure, I'm free. Where would you like to meet?" Ethan asked, eager to find out what this meeting would entail. David suggested a cafe downtown, a quiet spot where they could talk without any rush. Ethan agreed, not realizing that this meeting would soon change the course of his life. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the cafe right on time. David was already there, seated at a table by the window. He was a man in his early 40s with a friendly smile and a relaxed demeanor. When he saw Ethan approach, he stood up to greet him with a firm handshake. "Ethan, thanks for coming." "Please have a seat," David said, motioning to the chair across from him. They both sat down, and after a few minutes of casual conversation, David got straight to the point. "My grandmother spoke very highly of you. She was extremely grateful for your help, and so am I. But I'm not here just to thank you." David paused, looking directly into Ethan's eyes. "I own a chain of convenience stores, and I've been looking for someone with integrity to manage one of my locations. What you did for my grandmother shows that you're the right person for the job. So what do you say?" Ethan could hardly believe what he was hearing. The offer seemed like a dream. Being promoted to manager with the potential for a much better salary was something he had never even considered. "I don't know what to say," Ethan replied, stunned. "This is an incredibly generous offer." David smiled. "You deserve it. People like you are rare. Consider this a reward for your kindness and character." If you're enjoying this heartwarming story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and activate notifications so you won't miss the exciting conclusion of Ethan's journey. Ethan sat there stunned by David's offer. He had walked into the cafe expecting nothing more than a polite conversation, perhaps a simple thank you for his act of kindness. Instead, he was now being presented with an opportunity that seemed almost too good to be true. A managerial position at one of David's stores. I don't know what to say," Ethan stammered, still processing the shock. "I'm incredibly grateful, but why me? You hardly know anything about me." David leaned back in his chair, studying Ethan with a calm and thoughtful expression. "My grandmother is everything to me," David said, his voice filled with sincerity. "When she told me what you did, it wasn't just about paying for a few groceries. It was about the compassion you showed her, the way you treated her with dignity when so many others would have turned their back. That kind of character is rare, Ethan, and it's exactly what I need in someone who can lead a team with integrity." Ethan could feel his heart pounding in his chest. It wasn't just the offer that moved him, it was the recognition of something deeper, something he had always believed in: kindness, respect, and the belief that people deserved a helping hand. And here was David, not only acknowledging that, but rewarding it in a way Ethan had never imagined. "Look," David continued, sensing Ethan's hesitation. "I get it, you probably weren't expecting this. But let me tell you, I've been running businesses long enough to know that finding someone with your kind of values is rare. This isn't just a job offer, Ethan. It's a chance for you to step into something bigger, nover, something where you can make a real difference, not just for yourself, but for the people you work with." Ethan sat there in silence for a moment, overwhelmed by everything David had said. The idea of being a manager had never crossed his mind. He had been content with his life as a store clerk, even if the pay wasn't great and the hours were long. But this was a whole new level of responsibility and opportunity. "Okay," Ethan finally said, nodding slowly as the reality of the offer began to sink in. "I'll do it. I'll take the job." David smiled, clearly pleased with Ethan's decision. "That's what I wanted to hear. I'll have everything set up for you to start next week. In the meantime, let's get you familiar with the team and the store you'll be managing." The two men shook hands, sealing the deal that would change Ethan's life. As they stood to leave, David added one last comment that stuck with Ethan. "Remember, Ethan, this isn't just about running a store. It's about leading by example. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that people will follow someone they respect. You've already proven that you're someone worth following." In the days that followed, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief. Just a few days ago, he had been fired from his job, left wondering how he would explain everything to his mother and sister. Now, he was about to step into a role that offered him not only financial stability, but a sense of purpose that he hadn't realized he was missing. The morning of his first day as manager arrived, and Ethan felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He wasn't sure what to expect. Would the staff respect him? Could he handle the pressure of running an entire store? These thoughts swirled in his mind as he drove to the new location, a much larger store than the one where he had worked before. When he arrived, David was waiting for him, along with the assistant manager, Hannah, who had been with the company for years. She greeted Ethan with a warm smile, and the three of them walked through the store, discussing everything from inventory to staff management. "I've heard great things about you, Ethan," Hannah said as they toured the aisles. "David has a good eye for talent, and I can already tell you're going to be a great fit here." Ethan smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. Maybe this wasn't going to be as overwhelming as he'd feared. The staff seemed friendly, and Hannah was more than willing to help him ease into his new role. Over the next few weeks, Ethan settled into the routine of being a store manager. There were challenges, of course, dealing with difficult customers, managing schedules, and handling the unexpected issues that arose throughout the day. But with each passing day, Ethan grew more confident in his abilities. He quickly gained the respect of his team, not by being authoritative, but by leading with kindness and fairness, just as David had encouraged him to do. It didn't take long for the store's performance to improve under Ethan's leadership. Customer satisfaction went up, and the employees seemed happier working in an environment where they felt valued and heard. Ethan's approach to management, treating everyone with respect and compassion, proved to be just as effective as David had predicted. One afternoon, about 2 months into his new job, Ethan received a visitor at the store. It was Rosalie Carter, the elderly woman he had helped at his previous job. She walked into the store with a bright smile, holding a small basket of homemade cookies. "Ethan, dear, I've been meaning to come by and see you," Rosalie said, her eyes twinkling with gratitude. "You have no idea how much your kindness meant to me that day. I couldn't believe it when my grandson told me what happened with your job." Ethan chuckled softly, shaking his head. "It's funny how things work out, isn't it? Getting fired felt like the worst thing in the world at the time, but it led me here." Rosalie nodded, her smile widening. "You did something good, and the world found a way to repay you. I've always believed in that." She handed him the basket of cookies, her way of saying thank you once more. Ethan accepted the gift, feeling a deep sense of connection to this woman who unknowingly had changed his life forever. As they stood there talking, Ethan realized how far he had come since that day at his old job. What had started as a simple act of kindness had turned into something so much more. A new career, a new sense of purpose, and a reminder that doing the right thing, even when it's hard, can lead to unexpected and beautiful outcomes. Ethan had settled into his new role as store manager better than he could have ever expected. His life had transformed in ways he never imagined. From being a regular store clerk who struggled to make ends meet, he was now managing a store, earning more than enough to support his family and doing work he genuinely cared about. He felt grateful every day, not only for the opportunity, but for the lessons he had learned along the way. However, despite all the success he was experiencing, Ethan never forgot where it all started, with that small act of kindness for Rosalie. She had remained a presence in his life, stopping by the store every now and to check in on him. Sometimes she would bring homemade treats, and other times they would just chat about life. Ethan looked forward to those moments, knowing that his kindness had created a bond that went beyond mere chance. But things were about to take another unexpected turn. One quiet afternoon, while Ethan was going over the store's monthly sales reports in his office, he received an urgent phone call. It was from David Carter. "Ethan, I need to talk to you," David said, his voice unusually serious. Ethan sat up straighter in his chair, feeling a knot of anxiety form in his stomach. "What's going on? Is everything okay?" David sighed on the other end. "It's my grandmother. Rosalie's health has been declining. We've known for a while, but it's gotten worse recently. She's been asking for you." Ethan's heart sank. Rosalie had always seemed so full of life, despite her age. He hadn't realized she was struggling with any serious health issues. "I'm so sorry, David. Of course I'll go see her. When would be a good time?" Ethan asked, his concern for Rosalie overwhelming his thoughts. "As soon as you can," David replied. "She's at home, resting, but she's been asking to see you every day. I think it would mean a lot to her if you could visit." Without hesitation, Ethan agreed. After making arrangements for the store to be managed in his absence, he headed to Rosalie's house that same evening. The drive there felt heavy, his mind swirling with thoughts of how much she had impacted his life without even knowing it. As he pulled up to the modest, quaint house, Ethan took a deep breath, preparing himself for whatever lay ahead. Rosalie's daughter answered the door and welcomed Ethan inside with a sad smile. The house was quiet, a stark contrast to the lively conversations he used to share with Rosalie when she visited the store. As Ethan entered the living room, he saw her lying on the couch, looking frail, but still managing a warm smile as soon as she saw him. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice weak but full of affection. "I was hoping you'd come." Ethan walked over and sat beside her, gently taking her hand. "Of course I'm here, Rosalie. How are you feeling?" She chuckled lightly, the sound tinged with the weight of her illness. "Oh, I've been better, but I'm an old woman now. These things happen. But I couldn't leave without thanking you properly." Ethan was confused. "Thank me? Rosalie, you've already done so much. You don't owe me anything." Rosalie shook her head, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of sadness and gratitude. "No, Ethan, it's you who changed everything for me. When you helped me that day, you didn't just give me groceries. You gave me hope when I had very little left. And I knew then that you were someone special. My grandson saw it too, which is why he made you that offer." Ethan's eyes welled up with emotion. "I didn't know it meant so much to you." "It did," she whispered. "It changed everything." For the next hour, Ethan sat by Rosalie's side, listening as she shared stories about her life, her family, and her memories. She spoke with such warmth that despite her condition, Ethan couldn't help but feel inspired by her strength. As their conversation wound down, Rosalie squeezed his hand one last time. "I know I won't be around much longer, Ethan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I want you to remember that kindness, real kindness, is never wasted. You've proven that. And you've done more for me and my family than you'll ever know." Ethan sat with her a little while longer before leaving, the weight of her words lingering in his heart. As he walked to his car, he felt a deep sense of gratitude, not only for Rosalie's friendship, but for the impact she had on his life. He promised himself that he would carry her message with him always. A few weeks later, Rosalie passed away peacefully, surrounded by her family. Ethan was invited to the small private funeral, where David and his family expressed their deepest gratitude for the kindness Ethan had shown their beloved matriarch. David pulled Ethan aside after the service, handing him an envelope. "This is for my grandmother," David explained. "She left this for you. She said it was important." Ethan hesitated for a moment before opening the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter from Rosalie, along with a legal document. The letter was short but heartfelt, expressing her love and appreciation for everything Ethan had done. The document, however, left Ethan speechless. It was a deed to a small property, a house that Rosalie had owned for many years but had left vacant. In her final act of generosity, she had chosen to leave it to Ethan, knowing that he and his family could benefit from it far more than she ever would. Ethan's hands trembled as he read the letter. Rosalie had given him more than just a home. She had given him the security and stability his family desperately needed. Tears filled his eyes as he turned to David. "I don't know what to say," Ethan said, his voice cracking with emotion. David smiled, his own eyes glistening. She wanted to give back to the person who gave her hope. "You were like family to her, Ethan." Overwhelmed, Ethan could only nod, deeply moved by Rosalie's final gift. He knew that her kindness had come full circle, and in that moment, he realized the true power of compassion. What had started as a simple act of generosity had led to a series of life-changing events, both for himself and for Rosalie. In the weeks that followed, Ethan and his family moved into the house Rosalie had left them. It was modest, but it was theirs, and for the first time in years, they felt a sense of stability and peace. Ethan continued his work as a store manager, leading his team with the same kindness and respect that had guided him from the beginning. Every time he thought back to the day he helped Rosalie, he was reminded that small acts of kindness could have ripple effects far beyond what anyone could imagine. And as he stood on the porch of his new home, looking out at the future ahead, Ethan smiled, knowing that he had made a difference, not just in Rosalie's life, but in his own. Great. Let's move on to the conclusion of the story. I'll wrap up Ethan's journey, bring all the emotional elements together, and ensure that the ending ties up all the loose ends. Ethan sat on the porch of the house that had been left to him by Rosalie, the evening breeze gently ruffling his hair. The house, a modest but cozy home with a small garden out front, had become a sanctuary for him, his mother, and his sister. It had been a few months since they moved in, and life had settled into a peaceful rhythm. For the first time in years, Ethan felt a sense of stability he had never thought possible. Every day as he looked around the house, he was reminded of Rosalie's kindness and the impact of his own small act of generosity. What started as a simple gesture to help an elderly woman in need had spiraled into something far greater than he could have ever imagined. His family no longer had to worry about rent or living in a cramped apartment. The home gave them a fresh start, a future filled with possibilities. Ethan's job at the convenience store had also flourished. Under his management, the store was thriving. Customer satisfaction was at an all-time high, and his employees felt valued and respected. Ethan had created an environment where kindness and understanding were the foundations of their work. David Carter had even offered him the opportunity to oversee multiple locations, a sign of his growing trust in Ethan's leadership. Despite all these successes, Ethan never let the responsibilities or praise change him. He remained the same humble and compassionate person who had offered to help a stranger in need. He understood that life was unpredictable, and no matter how good things were, challenges could always arise. But now he felt equipped to face anything. One evening, as Ethan sat on the porch after work, his sister Emma came running out of the house, her face beaming with excitement. "Ethan, guess what?" she called out, clutching a letter in her hand. She waved it in the air as she ran toward him. Ethan smiled at her enthusiasm, curious about what had gotten her so excited. He took the letter from her and noticed the logo of a local scholarship foundation in the corner. His heart skipped a beat. "Open it, Ethan. Don't just stare at it," Emma urged, bouncing on her toes. With a mixture of anticipation and nervousness, Ethan carefully tore open the envelope and unfolded the letter. As his eyes scanned the words, he could hardly believe what he was reading. "Dear Mr. Ethan Spencer, we are pleased to inform you that you have been awarded a full scholarship to attend the Springfield Community College. Your application, which highlighted your commitment to helping others and your strong leadership in the community, has impressed the selection committee. We believe you will continue to make a positive impact through your education and future career. Congratulations." Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he reread the letter. It felt surreal. After everything that had happened, now he was being given the opportunity to pursue higher education, something he had always dreamed of but never thought would be possible due to financial constraints. You did it, Ethan. You got the scholarship, Emma exclaimed, throwing her arms around him. Ethan hugged her tightly, his heart swelling with gratitude. This scholarship was more than just a chance to study. It was a testament to the journey he had been on, a reminder that the good he had put into the world was coming back to him in ways he could never have anticipated. That night, as Ethan sat with his family at the dinner table, they talked about the future, about the opportunities that lay ahead. His mother, Laura, was beaming with pride, her eyes brimming with tears of joy. "I always knew you were destined for great things, Ethan," she said softly. "You've worked so hard, and you've never lost sight of who you are. This is just the beginning." Ethan smiled, feeling the warmth of his family's support surrounding him. He knew that none of this would have been possible without them, and without Rosalie. Later, as the evening drew to a close, Ethan found himself thinking back to that fateful day in the convenience store. He could still see Rosalie's face, filled with gratitude as he handed her the groceries. He could hear her voice, filled with emotion, thanking him for a simple act that had changed both their lives. It was a reminder that the smallest actions, the quietest gestures, could have the most profound impacts. Rosalie's legacy lived on in Ethan, not just through the house she had left him, but through the lessons she had taught him about kindness, generosity, and the power of human connection. He carried those lessons with him every day, in the way he led his team at the store, in the way he treated his family, and now in the way he would approach his future education. As he prepared for his first day of college, Ethan couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. This was a new chapter, a chance to grow and learn, and to continue making a difference in the world. He knew that wherever life took him next, he would always be guided by the values that had shaped his journey so far. On his way to campus that first morning, Ethan stopped by the small garden he had planted in front of the house, Rosalie's house. It was filled with bright, vibrant flowers, a symbol of life and growth, just as she had envisioned. He knelt down and whispered a quiet thank you, knowing that wherever she was, Rosalie was smiling down on him. As Ethan stood up and walked toward the future, he felt a profound sense of peace. He knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he had everything he needed to succeed: kindness, courage, and the unwavering belief that even in the darkest moments, there was always a way forward. Thank you for following Ethan's journey. If this story inspired you, please like the video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more heartwarming stories like this one. We have plenty more uplifting tales to share, so stay tuned for the next one.